Welcome to the Find and Follow podcast, where we believe life is in the light, spiritual darkness is the enemy, and finding and following Jesus is the best way to live life. I'm Scott Langhans, your host, joined today by Tanner, TD is what I usually call you, but Tanner Decker.
What's up, everybody?
Kyle Kingsley. We're here hanging out at the podcast HQ. I'm fired up today about today's podcast.
Fired up.
I am. You know, it's one of those days where you just get excited about something.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You've just been looking forward to it all week, huh?
Usually I do, but today was just extra special. So hopefully, I just love helping people, and so I hope today's helpful for folks. I think we can jump into some fun stuff about purpose and truth and God's faithfulness, and I just got fired up about it.
Yeah, let's go.
And then sometimes you think I don't know how to get all of that out of you. Do you ever have those moments where you get
where you have too much to say, too much you want to get off your chest, out of your mind, and you're like, I don't know how to put all this to words.
Right, and then you try, and you're like, that sounded way better in my head.
Yeah. Oh yeah, all the time.
All the time, you're like, it's so clear in here, but I can't. And people just look at you like deer in headlights. You're like,
that didn't make any sense.
Didn't make any sense. I'll just keep talking, and hopefully it gets better, and it doesn't. Yeah. So hopefully it's not that today. Hopefully it's better than that. But yeah, just wanted to be helpful today.
Heck yeah.
There we go. All right. Hopefully we do good on the audio. We're trying a little microphone stand today.
You know, just gotta love technology working with us and against us sometimes.
But it is working with us. I mean, as much as I like to complain about it, just again heard from somebody who hasn't been able to join us in person at Mission Church, and they've been listening in and appreciate it. They kind of started later, so they've been listening to older episodes and tuning in on the live stream, but sent an email about the podcast and said, hey, we're able to, as a couple, tune in and really enjoying this, helping. So
that's awesome. That's fantastic.
So we always appreciate feedback, what God's doing in you, how he's using this to help you grow, help you get connected to him, and ultimately help you follow him. So any feedback is appreciated. Let us know. Hit us up. Is that what you say? Tanner, help me out here. What do the cool kids, the young kids say? Hit me up? Do we still say
that?
Right.
Just let me know.
That's what you say?
That's what I say. Or just let me know. Tell me later.
That's what people under 25 are using these days? Because I feel like that's what we've always used.
Dude, I'm not in time with the with my generation of slang.
Really?
No, not at all.
But are you aware? Do you know?
Not that
you use it.
A little bit.
What do kids say? Do they say, just let me know? That sounds like what my dad says.
No, they'd probably say, hit me up. But that's when they're, usually when they're, trying to get a date or something like that.
Slide into the DMs, bro.
Yeah. Slide into the DMs. That's another one.
I feel like that's your generation, though. The slide into the DMs? It's
No.
the early 30s.
Sure.
Man, does this mean we're all too old since we have no idea?
I guess so.
We're just out of touch.
I didn't think I was getting old. I was like, yeah, I'm still 20. I'm young. And then got hired here.
Time out. I'm still 20?
I'm still, 23, in my 20s.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm in my 20s. And I was like, yeah, I'm still super young. And then working with more youth stuff, I'm like, wow, I'm really old, apparently. I'm already outdated.
Yeah, you're an adult. You, graduated college, have a job, a car.
Yeah.
So we were doing, Kyle, you don't know this, but we were doing, Tanner and I were doing a little youth day, work day here at the building, cleaning out our outside storage with the semi-trailers. And I don't know, there's 25 youth students.
The first one, yeah. A lot of students.
A lot of students. So we're just trying to keep them busy, keep them rolling. We're moving stuff over to next door. There's some storage units and throwing stuff away. And a bunch of high school kids. And we had a couple of vehicles to transport stuff from the trailer over to the storage unit into long-term storage. And we had your truck, Kyle. You left your truck, and you gave the keys to Tanner and I, responsible adult-type people. And so I was trying to organize and distribute the workload and keep people moving because we just didn't want a bunch of students standing around. We got all this horsepower, let's get it going. So I figured it's literally through the parking lot. You don't have to get on a street anywhere to go from our semi-trailer to the long-term storage unit. And I thought, we'll load it up. I'll keep directing. Surely one of these high school kids could drive over. And I said, and I walked up to a group of 10 of them. I said, who does Kyle trust to drive his truck? Was my question. through a parking lot. Like, you don't even have to put a seatbelt on. All of them looked at me like, not me, not me, not me. And then one of them goes, well, I have a permit.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the group. And then they all kind of figured it out at once, and they said, well, Taylor just got his license. He's probably the best one.
I think Taylor's the only like high school guy at least because
the
it was just a
guys,
group of guys. He's
Yeah,
the
all
only
the
one that has
girls
their
have
license.
their license. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bunch of dudes. And I go, Taylor's our best option? Because I've heard of him how he failed like his driver's test, and his dad and I were talking. I'm like, well, he's out. We're not. I'll just drive the truck. I'm not.
Probably a good idea.
I'm not trusted. These guys don't trust themselves. I'm not going to
Yeah.
trust. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's why in the meeting the other day, Tanner needed to borrow another truck, and Craig's like, "You could borrow mine." I'm like,
I was like,
you should probably just borrow mine. It's a lot crappier.
Yeah.
We're good.
I don't want to risk like breaking the nice truck.
Yeah. I was like, my truck's already broken all over the place. The students from the last work day already broke my tailgate. I'm like, you're fine.
You're fine.
There's
Well,
scratches.
that's kind of what I thought we. And then they gave me the look like, I don't think this is a good idea. I'm like, well,
Probably
it's definitely not a good idea.
Because I can think of probably all 10 of those students, and they probably self-identified very well in that moment.
They did.
Yeah.
But then I thought, what's the deal with this generation? Like, I don't get it. I couldn't wait to get my license. Be responsible.
That phrase in and of itself made you sound really old.
Yeah.
What's the deal with this
I know.
generation? These darn youngins.
Somebody's got to say it. It's my turn. Now
Yeah,
it's
this
my
is
turn.
like you the other
This is
day.
you.
If you didn't hear Scott speak the other day about when you were talking about holes in jeans,
Yes.
that was another phrase that made you sound
Holes in
ancient.
jeans.
Like,
Oh yeah.
I'm with you though. We have a lot of students that don't get their license in a hurry. They don't.
Yeah, I never understood that.
I
I was in
don't
the same
either.
boat. Like, I can't wait to get my license.
Right.
I got my permit like 15 and a half.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I think I got my license on my birthday or the day. Like I wanted it.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not saying the whole generation. I was that particular group. I'm like, what's the deal? Aren't we hungry to get after some stuff in life and go do something? Like, make life happen to you?
Yeah, they just
Nope.
jump in Taylor's car.
I guess,
guess.
granted, thinking about that group of guys, I don't know how many of them are actually also old enough to get their license. Only a couple of them are old enough to get their license.
Okay.
The other guys are a little bit younger. Like Guy and JT, they're just they're still freshmen in high school, I think.
Okay.
So they're not even old. Maybe they
They
might
gotta
be
at
sophomores.
least be sophomores.
Might be sophomores.
Yeah, I did not know all of their ages. You're correct.
Yeah.
So I could be presuming a bit there. But anyways, I was just, fired up about it. Old people stuff. I don't know. Maybe that's me now. That's what I say. I did those jeans that have holes in them that I wear. I did put them on. I think yesterday. Yeah, my foot came through where the hole is. In
Oh,
the knee.
yeah. You gotta be
rip that
careful.
sucker a little bit bigger.
Yep.
And then later in the day, my wife was like, "Hey, what's up with your jeans?" Because it was a little too far. I was like, "Yeah." Couldn't quite get my leg.
Every time I
through
put my feet
pants.
through, I gotta be like go to the side and maneuver around the hole so you don't rip them even more.
You have
Whoops.
pants with holes in them too?
Oh yeah, dude, I'm hip.
I don't
dude.
even
we're cool.
have those kind of pants. I've never liked those pants.
You're just too
I don't-
cool.
I don't think they look
You
good.
are way too old for 23. It sounds like.
Yeah, I don't get why people buy. It's like the joke: do you pay extra for those holes in your pants?
Right. Less
Pay-
fabric.
Yeah, do you
Yeah.
pay more for less pants?
Less pants, pay more, get less. I don't know if that's a good store to start or not.
Nope.
But anyways, we're looking at John's eyewitness account of following Jesus, and we're at this point in the story of Jesus being arrested. And so if you tuned in recently, we talked about it last week, how the disciples wanted to push back and say, no way, you're not taking Jesus. But Jesus was surrendering to the Father's will. And so we're picking it up in John 18. And I was just struck, and you guys can talk about whatever, but I was just struck again by just how much is going on in the moment. They don't really realize what's happening. It's only because we sit where we sit today with history and hindsight and the full revelation of God's story recorded for us. Like the disciples going through the moment, you just, like for me, you look back, you go, oh, I get what happened in life in that stage. You just don't get it fully in the moment. But there's this prophetic word that once Jesus gets arrested, he gets taken to first to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. And so Annas is like the ex-high priest, and so he's kind of like well, we should take him to him first. He's not technically in charge, but he's still around, so he's kind of in charge. It's kind of one of those situations. So they take it to him first and gets questioned. But Caiaphas, it says in verse 14, Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jews, and this is earlier, that it would be good if one man died for the people. And I love how John picks that up later when he's writing that. He recorded that back in chapter, what was that? Chapter 11. And he just has this prophecy was they're talking about. It's like, hey, because Jesus was causing trouble, and he said it in the context of like, hey, wouldn't it be better if we just got rid of this one guy so that everybody would like settle down and we would preserve the peace that we have going on in our nation? So he says it without knowing like how true his statement is in the sense of, well, it wouldn't be better if one man died for all, which is what Jesus did to pay for the sin of all people. He's just not referring to that. And I love that John records that nugget that if you just kind of quick read or don't have that scope of the story of what's going on, you kind of can breeze by that and you go, oh, okay, cool. What happens next? But such a powerful truth that happens, and that God uses Caiaphas to like speak this prophetic word and this truth that's there, and he doesn't even really realize how true it is.
Yeah, he gets this message, but then him and the other Jewish leaders are trying to like fulfill it themselves by their own means. Kind of, they're saying like, oh, this was the prophecy, and they're kind of like misinterpreting what it's supposed to mean. And yeah, it still leads to the good that God had planned for it, but it's just interesting how they have this wrong interpretation, but still God is like using that as what is bringing the good.
Yeah, the depth of what's going on, Scott, like you talked about. I had that same thought. Even in last week when I'm in this chaotic scene, this kind of like you referred to it, big epic kind of movie moment, right? Like this big epic
Star Wars.
Or
I had the whole parallel going.
Yeah,
You're still loving it. I can hear it in your voice.
For sure. The depth of what's going on. So even here, I think about this a lot in this chunk of scripture with the Jewish people and what they thought they were doing,
right?
And what, like Tanner, like you referenced, what it's actually fulfilling. And again, it's easy for us to look back and go, how could they read, even their Hebrew scriptures and these prophecies about Jesus and what they said, and then still be the ones who crucified Jesus and ultimately fulfilled those prophecies, but doing it in a way that they thought they were getting rid of the bad guy, right? Like that's their whole thought is this crazy blasphemer, troublemaker, weirdo who's ruining our religion. Let's kill him. They're actually fulfilling the prophecy that their religion has for thousands of years referenced and pointed to. So like you say, it's kind of crazy, deep spider's web, if you will.
Yeah, because Jesus had a following that was growing and growing and growing. So it wasn't just like, here's one lunatic out in the corner by himself and nobody's paying attention to him. Like, all of culture was shifting, and how Jesus was treating people and advocating for like women and children particularly was changing all of culture. And people were starting to like sit up and pay attention and go, oh, maybe this way of Jesus and what he's saying that he's from God, maybe this is better than what our religious leaders have been saying.
Yeah.
But John captures that, like he sees that. And I don't know, that was just speaking to me this week, where I just don't want to miss what God's doing in the moment in my life. That I don't want to just breeze by and it's always a hindsight thing. That, stuff is clear, but I just want to be more in tune, more aware. We had a vision night on Sunday night where we just spent more time as a larger community gathered and praying together and asking God, surrendering ourselves more to him and just having from fresh vision for 2021 in our lives. And I'm just like, okay, God, let me open my eyes to like what you're doing in my life and today and Wednesday and with my neighbors and with my family, and just don't want to miss out on these moments that are going through and just kind of be normal, But I want to be different. I want to see what God sees in these moments.
That's a good word.
So let's jump in. So this is a kind of a familiar section. If you're familiar with the story, and I kind of had a different thought today too on it, I think, than I normally do. But so Jesus gets arrested. So the heat is on. Is that how you'd say that? Like
heat is on.
It's going down.
It's going down.
It's going down.
It's about to go down.
It's like where this is the movie climax. Like you thought everything was good, and then boom, they got busted. Jesus gets arrested. The band breaks up. Everyone scatters. And then Peter and another disciple, could be John, I don't know. So 2 dudes, they kind of sneakily follow Jesus as he's getting arrested, and they went to the courtyard area for the high priest, and Peter had to wait outside the door. The other disciple apparently knew the high priest really well and got like VIP entrance.
He's got the backstage pass,
Yeah.
but then he has to go and go, hey, come on, can you let my buddy in too? He doesn't have a backstage pass, but he knows a guy.
Yeah, flashed the badge,
Yeah.
slipped him the hundo.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I've never gotten it, like, had to go into one of those places.
Oh, really?
No.
I snuck into a few back doors in my, gig days back in the day.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
You know the band, and
And you
you
just-
don't want to pay the $5 cover charge.
Yeah.
And they're like, you help load the gear with them. You carried an
You just
amp.
kinda, oh yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I've
Got
the
it.
guitar. I got the guitar.
My favorite story, a buddy in college, he was from Denver. His name's Chris. And I think he found a jacket. I think he found it at a Goodwill, a thrift store of some kind. Or he stole it. I'm not sure exactly. But he ended up with one of the Broncos Stadium security jackets. It's like a bright yellow jacket that
No
said
way.
security. So he, at home games, he would just throw it on, wander over to like the security entrance and go in with that on and get into the games.
And
then
that's all it took was a
and
jacket?
that's all-
They didn't
no
have any kind
credentials,
of like
nothing?
yeah,
No, he would-
a card like
Oh,
a
I don't know.
ID.
That's
nothing?
what he said. The story was he would sneak in. And he said, "Oh yeah, I've been to a bunch of games." And this was like late '90s, so security is a little different nowadays
True.
after 911.
I was going to say
So-
pre 9/11 security
yeah.
was just a little
So this
bit-
was like, but he would just sneak in and go to games and act like a security guard. I was always
Now
intrigued
you can
up.
just order that on Amazon, a security shirt, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, no." They'd be like, "Get out of here."
Yeah. Now they're going to make you do a retinal scan
Yeah.
or something. But anyway, so they get in the courtyard. They're hanging around a fire pit, and Jesus had predicted what was going to happen in Peter's life. That hey, the heat's going down. What did we say the phrase was? The heat's on.
It's going down.
It's going down. And Peter's like, I'm going to follow you, Jesus, to, forever. I'm going to surrender my life. Like, you're it. You're totally worth it. And Jesus was like, no. Dude, it's going to get intense. There's going to be a little bit of pushback, a little bit of peer pressure, and you're going to run and deny me. And so here's this first moment where they're hanging around this fire, waiting to see what's happened to Jesus. And verse 17, he says, "You are not one of his disciples, are you?" The girl at the door asked Peter, like this young girl man in the door, as the other disciple went to get him. And he replied, Nope. Not me. And he does that 3 times throughout. And so he's getting questioned. Another one is one of the guys that was in the mob that arrested Jesus. He said, hey, didn't I see you over at the garden? You look like totally like one of those guys. He goes, no, that wasn't me. And so, it's a pretty familiar part of the story of Peter's denial and like, dude, how could you do that? And why would you abandon following Jesus? And it's just this like, basic thing where people like, hey, aren't you a Jesus follower? And we can kind of get going on Peter's part of it. And today was struck like, yeah, okay, that's kind of where I started. I'm like, yeah, sure, we do. We need a full surrender to Jesus, regardless of peer pressure and like, who are we living for? To please ourselves and please, what people's opinion, other people, or are we genuinely following Jesus? Mm-hmm. And if we fully surrender to him, and it doesn't matter people's opinion, it doesn't matter if they're like, oh, well, you're with him, you're going to get the same treatment, you're going to get arrested and go down the same course. And so I was kind of, yes, that's true, absolutely, that's our part. But then I was reminded too of just the big picture of God's story is it's all about God's faithfulness. Mm-hmm. And I was just encouraged today by like, it's not so much about Peter's denial. That is important. Like we don't if you're going to be following Jesus, don't deny Jesus. Mm-hmm. Okay. But like that's the start of the story. God said, I'm going to make man and woman, bless them, and you're blessed. And then what do? Not be faithful. We screw it up. Mm-hmm. And then what does God say? Well, I'm still going to be faithful, and I'm going to make a new covenant, particularly with Abraham, and I'm going to bless all people. So anybody of faith, I'm going to bless all people through this one man, and I'm going to be faithful, even though Abraham screws up, everybody screws up, Isaac screws up, Jacob, Joseph, like everybody screws up. I screw up, but God's still faithful. Mm-hmm. And this is not the end of Peter's story. he's not faithful, but God's still faithful. That's the story from the whole thing. And I've been reading since the beginning of the year, the Bible Project, one story that leads to Jesus. It's all about Jesus, and it's a great, year-long devotional. I'm just like, man, and they point that out all the time. Like, it's God's faithfulness. That's the start of the story. That's the whole point of the story. And yeah, Peter needs to, like, be faithful, but it's more about God's faithfulness than Peter at this point, because Jesus does restore him, and he, it all works out in the end. It's a happy ending, and
Yeah, and what Peter's able to do, right, is, as we know in the first century church and all of that, I mean, it's mind-blowing in how influential he was specifically within Judaism, right, to the same people or same part of the same group of people who were anti what Jesus was doing and what Peter's able to do within that culture. That's a great point, Scott, in just understanding that. Because, I don't know if John records it, the conversation that Jesus has with Peter, who, when he tells him that he's going to do this, right? Like, hey, you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows.
Yeah, that's 13:38.
Yeah. So, and he's like, and again, that conversation is curious to me, because, like, this isn't Peter's first time, having these intense conversations with Jesus, where Jesus kind of has to put Peter in his place. We see that all throughout the Gospels. Again, we've talked a little bit about it on the podcast, just Peter's brashness, and he's the guy who's going to say what he's thinking, and so sometimes that gets him in trouble, or at least gets him in these awkward situations. So I'm wondering what's going through his mind as Jesus is like, hey, like, you're not going to always be faithful, right? And I think Peter, like any of us, like, no, Jesus, I love you. Like, I'm going to do the best that I can, and I would never do anything to upset you. And then we find ourselves going, oh, crap. Like, I really blew that one, right? Like, I really messed up there. Should not have done that. That was stupid.
Yeah.
And Jesus still going, like, hey, I love you. You're right. That was dumb. You shouldn't have done that. But there's restoration and love from God, which is a cool place to look at that.
Yeah, it just reminds me of, Kyle, the phrase that when we were talking earlier today, and the phrase that you brought up, like, nothing that we do can make God love us any more or any less. God already loves us for all that we are, because He's made us. He knit us together when we were in our mother's wombs. He loves us so much, and there's nothing that we can do, no matter what denial we make or the things we screw up in. Nothing's going to make God love us any less. But at the same time, there's nothing we can do that's going to make God love us even more, because He already loves us entirely for who we are. Nothing that we do will ever make God's love greater to us.
Which, again, Scott, as you're pointing out, this makes so much more sense to some of the letters that Peter's going to write to people that are explaining that fact about grace and about these things that, like, he experienced it firsthand, right? And this, this New Testament theology that we get about salvation by faith through grace from Peter and Paul specifically, it brings it so much more to life when you read a story like this and go, yeah, Peter knows that. Like, hey, I wasn't perfect, and I was still loved by my best friend. I was still forgiven. I was still accepted. And he knew I was going to do it before I even do it, and he did it. And I know I felt his love firsthand, and it never dipped because I made mistakes, and I made him a bunch, right? And I already knew that he loved me so much I couldn't earn his love anymore. I couldn't, like, be better. And a lot of these guys tried, like, we want to be at the top. We want to be the best disciple. And they're like, nope, it doesn't work that way. Not with Jesus. And so the firsthand experience they have, like, points that out even more beautifully, Scott.
I wonder if Peter knew it was going to happen. This is just kind of a tangent. I don't know how relevant it is.
Just had that own self-awareness enough?
No, because Jesus tells him, back to John 13, and the other guys recorded too, but Peter's wanting to go. Jesus said, hey, where I'm going to go, you're not going to follow. Meaning, hey, I'm going to the cross. I'm paying for the sins. Then I'm returning to heaven. Peter's like, well, you're going down the street? He's like, no, I'm not down the street. He's like, you going to next door town? He's like, you have no clue. I'm like, earthly things. You're on earthly things. I'm on heavenly things. So he says, hey, Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. Like, he throws it out there like, I'm all in with you, Jesus. And this is where he says, will you really? Will you really lay down your life for me? I tell you the truth, before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. So it's like tonight. like in the next couple of hours, dude.
Yeah, we're not even talking about in years down the road.
Yeah, we're not talking about the rest of your life or when you get old or till you die. Like, no, next couple hours, you can't even hang with me. I don't know. I'm just curious on like Peter going, well, snap, that's going to come true because it's Jesus and he doesn't
Yeah.
lie. So, like, where was he at on all of that?
Or I was gonna say just a little bit on that. What was Peter thinking? Wouldn't he have even made the connection with his first denial? Like, oh shoot, there's ones.
There's
Okay,
one.
I gotta be ready for like 2 more coming up.
I
Like,
got to stop. There's 2 more coming quick.
Yeah,
Or
like-
is he even thinking that? Like in the
He's
depth
probably
of
not.
like, I think a lot of times when we do stupid stuff like that, we're just not even thinking of like, he's just in self-preservation mode at that
Yeah.
point, right? And like not probably afterwards, then he was like, oh snap. But in the moment, he's like, no. And you know, it's not this big a deal that I'm just saying this so that I can get to the next level, right? I can get through this next round of people that are questioning me and I don't die.
Right.
And then he realizes.
I mean, if you were at a dinner party at a friend's house and then it got raided and your best friend got taken and then you found yourself down at the station in the middle of the night, you wouldn't be thinking, geez, what was our conversation at dinner like?
Yeah.
You know, you'd just be like, oh my goodness, what's happening? Who should we call? Like, are they okay? Do we need a lawyer? Like, yeah,
I
you're a
thought you
little
were
more-
asking me if like he got busted, if I would be like, if I would stand next to him. You're gonna put me on blast, like, no, yeah, I got your back, no matter what, man.
No, I'll be there.
All my friends,
You text
I got
me.
you.
I'll post your bail.
I'm ain't no snitch, okay?
yeah,
Ride or
snitches
die.
get stitches.
Yeah. I mean, if they were like, "Are the drugs yours?" I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about."
I don't know.
But I don't hang out with that kind of people, so
Right?
like your neighbors.
Yeah.
So.
Let's move along. But Peter later, you know, giving him credit, he writes a letter, and he says in verse 12 of his first letter, where am I at? 1 Peter 2:12. Live such good lives among the pagans or the people that don't believe in Jesus. You know, like as he's writing this, is he thinking about back to standing next to a fire with people that aren't Jesus followers, with some other, you know, this girl at the gate and the people, and he's like having a flashback moment. But he says, live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us, on the day he returns. Like, it doesn't, like, who are you living for? Like, it doesn't matter. Even if the people who aren't following Jesus are looking at your life going, well, you're doing life wrong. But you know you're doing it right because you're following Jesus. And so he comes around. But just in this moment, I was just struck again, not so much by Peter's failure, but by God's faithfulness. And how the whole story is, oh, yeah, we haven't been faithful as a people. And the people that are trying to follow God as best they can through their hearts. And God's like, here's how faithful I am. I will just show up in flesh. And it's not about your good works or your efforts, your religious activities. It's about my love and faithfulness. And you know I love you because I'm going to show up and I'm going to live a perfect life and then be the ultimate sacrifice to pay for sin, go to the cross, rise again, and then leave you myself in spirit form that indwells you. And then you go, I don't know if God loves me. Like, yeah, for sure he does. I mean, who doesn't love you? If they're going to die for you, they love you. And that's how faithful God is. And he's faithful to Peter, regardless of what happens here. Yeah, like Kyle, you referenced how Peter leads the early church and is fired up, stands up and tells people about Jesus in the public square, and thousands come to find Christ and follow him. And so it's this ultimately a full surrender by Peter.
Yep.
And I just think sometimes we can get stuck here, and then in our own personal stories we can get stuck on my own failure, and my own failure outshines God's faithfulness. And you're like, oh, I can't do it, and I try, you know, I screwed up once and twice. Oh, I screwed up 3 times. I should just quit, and it's not good, and God can't use me. And we get stuck there, and it's really a self-centeredness, a selfishness, I think, when we get stuck and hung up on our own failures, and we don't realize how big God's faithfulness is and what God's ultimately trying to do through us. So that's kind of where I was, you know, I guess surprised again today. And I was like, God, I don't want to miss, like as I go to this podcast moment, I don't want to miss what you're trying to do today. And he's like, oh, how about this? And I was like, oh, that's good. I like that a lot. I don't know. That was me today. It was really, really cool. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that? On the
No, I think that wraps up the denial part. Because again, that's an easy section to just look over and go, okay, cool. This is just John recording what's happening. We're in the midst of the thing, and then why talk about this, right? Why talk about you're just trying to throw Peter under the bus? Be like, look at what an idiot he was.
Yeah.
Like, no, there's depth to, again, I think Peter's understanding in relationship with Jesus and the character of God that we see in that, which is, again, it's easy just to skim over that and miss out on the depth of what it's telling us about who God is and how God relates to us.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was, I'm going to fast forward and then we'll rewind. But in verse 38, Jesus gets to his third questioning of this time. So he gets questioned by, Annas, right? And then Caiaphas. And then he's brought before Pilate, who's not a Jew. And Pilate asked Jesus this question, and this is the NIV translation: what is truth? And I don't know if Pilate's asking that like genuinely, like because he really wants to know, or if in the moment he's going, hey, you're getting falsely accused, whatever. Like, what's truth? Like, there's a mob out here. Does it really matter, exactly what's going down? And so I say that to start there, to kind of rewind then, because Jesus is defending himself, and as he's getting questioned, he's back to like verse 20. He says, I have spoken openly to the world. I was always taught in the synagogues or at the temple where all the Jews come together, and said nothing in secret. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. Surely they know what I said. And then some dude hauled off and struck him across the face. Kind of want to know what happened to that guy. Like, what'd you do in life? Oh, I slapped Jesus across the face.
Hit him.
Because he was mouthing. It was mouthing off. Anyways, because he was talking sassy to the high priest. And Jesus said, have I said something wrong? Like, testify as to what is wrong. But if I spoke the truth, why do you strike me? And so Jesus is bringing up this idea of truth, and what is truth? And I've spoke all truth, and so you have no right to slap me across the face. Everything I've said has been out in the open. Everything I've said is true. Like we've talked about earlier, everything that Jesus said is what he hears the Father say, and he only does and says the things that the Father's doing, and he is truth. It's not just he knows about truth or knows some truth, but it's against the character of God to lie. God cannot lie. He's not a liar. And so everything Jesus said was true. And so we have this big question of like, well, what is true? And they're really driving at the accusation that gets down here is that, that is Jesus really a king? Is he really doing this anti-Jew thing and trying to disrupt their life and their culture? And that's where Pilate's coming up with, well, what's true? And I don't know if he's just genuinely like, hey, you seem like you got a handle on the truth, or if he's just kind of being more sarcastic, like, does it really matter? Because I just need to appease these people right now. It doesn't matter what's true. We just need to wrap up this court case, and somebody's got to die. That's basically what happens.
But he says it in response to Jesus' answer to his question. Pilate asked, so are you a king? And again, you already referenced it here with Annas' questions, and we see it in the way that Jesus never just goes and gives them the answer they're looking for, right? He never even says like yes or no. It's always just like question with a question, or very cryptic, or very just deep. So he asks him, okay, so are you a king? Because they're bringing you here because they're saying you claim to be their king. You're not their king. They don't like it. That's blasphemy. That's why you're here. That's like the charge against you, is that you're lying about this. And so Jesus says, you say I'm a king, period. Actually, I was born and came into the world to testify the truth. All who love the truth recognize that which I say is true. And then that's when Pilate's like, well, what is truth? Like, I don't know. We can read into that all we want, but like, okay, well, what do you mean by that? What is truth? And, maybe it's a moment that Jesus is communicating to Pilate in the depths of the gospel truth of what that looks like. And what is truth, he asked, and that's pretty cool. Yeah. And then he's like, and in that moment, he's like, yeah, you're not guilty. I know that. I don't know a lot. I don't know what is truth maybe, but you're not guilty.
Right. Pilate could see that.
Yeah.
The Jews just wanted blood. They wanted Jesus' blood. They wanted him to just disappear because they think that would solve it. But I just was curious, this question, what is truth? It's been a question that's been around forever. And basically a different way for me to hear that and say that is like, what is good and what is evil? And that's been like from the get-go of the story is like, oh, God's holding out on you. If you eat of this tree, you're going to know like the difference between good and evil. And then you'll be able to decide what is good and what is evil. And God's going, no, that's not your role in life. And that's what Jesus said. Here's the answer to like, what is truth? Everyone on the side of truth listens to me. Like,
Yeah, and again, that's been a
That's-
theme that John has pointed to, right? That Jesus came full of grace and truth. So Jesus is full of truth, and that's what he's saying. Like, hey, I'm speaking the truth, and
Yeah.
people who have heard me are hearing the truth. Like, cut and dry, black and white. It's not relative. It's not, gray area. Like, it's truth.
yeah, he is the truth. So if you're on the side with Jesus, there you have found truth. And this understanding of like, well, how do I find truth? And what's my... And then, Tanner, you can have a truth, and I can have a truth, and everything's going to be relative, and it'd be subjective. And then when I get older, in about 10 or 20 years, I realized I was an idiot when I was 22. You know how I
You
said
realize
22?
that your truth wasn't the truth, or
Yeah. I went 22, not 23. Because
Okay,
I
yeah,
didn't want you
yeah.
to feel like you're an idiot.
Yeah. I know I'm not. So.
Yeah, 23 is way different than 22. Anyways, you just get older, you're like, oh, man, no, I was an idiot. Or the reality of like, no, the things that I do believe today, I still believe 20 years ago. But like the depth of the reality of what that means is like God's faithful. I believed that when I was 23. Now that I'm 41, like I still believe God's faithful. But the reality of my experience of how faithful he's been over all of those decades and what I've experienced just adds to the weightiness of that truth. From my experience, God's his part, his faithfulness was always there. He's always doing his part. Like we don't have to fret or lose sleep any time to go. Is
Yeah.
Is God doing his side? Is he going to do his part? Is he going to show up? Is he
Yeah.
going to be faithful?
Yeah, he is.
But how much energy do we spend on that? Thinking about that, like fretting over, like, will God provide? Will he come through? Can he bail me out? Like, is he faithful? Will he show up? But anyone who's on Jesus' side, man, you're in the truth. You know what's happening. And I love it that he points to Pilate, on this, hey, are you a king thing? He goes, yep, I got a kingdom. And if it really mattered on the earthly level, Peter with his little hobbit sword and the rest of the dudes, we would have and then the forces from heaven, we would have rained down and we would have made things right. But he goes, no, my kingdom is from another place. And you probably shouldn't get into it today, but like when people get all jacked up about fighting for God's kingdom and it looks like a lot of earthly political thing going on, I'm like, have you not read what Jesus said about his kingdom? Like, I'm all about getting things squared away in our neighborhoods, in our counties, in our governments, but that you're not fighting for the kingdom of God to come through, the election of the city council. Like, I love godly people in leadership, and I pray for leadership, but Jesus said his kingdom is a little bit different than the Jews' structure and the Roman structure as far as a political coming of the kingdom. And so be on the side of Jesus, you'll be on the side of truth. And what is truth?
Yeah, with that, I think this is something that was talked about a lot at Whitworth was the ways that people interact with political figures or are running for office, blah, 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 all those kind of things they look to Jesus' prayer of when he's teaching the disciples, like, hey, Jesus, teach us how to pray. And Jesus says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So I think a lot of people see that as whether they're trying to get godly Christian figures in politics, in leadership, all that stuff, they see that as their way of participating in bringing God's kingdom here. That's what I think some people view that as.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a strong tension because people may be listening right now on either side of those statements and be like fired up right now. And they can't believe we're saying one thing or can't believe we're not saying the other thing. And hopefully you can hear this if you're listening in, is that we have to be able to hold both of those things, and it's a tension to be managed. Because don't we want godly people leading us and guiding us and making decisions that affect our family and our neighborhoods? Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, and the New Testament tells us to pray for those in leadership.
Yeah.
Right?
And so should we vote for people that we feel like are more godly? Absolutely. But be careful that we don't get disillusioned that the kingdom of God comes through a political figure
Yeah.
or a popular figure, through an entertainer or a sports figure, and somehow the kingdom of God comes that way. It's like Jesus said, I'm going to leave and I'm going to pour out my spirit on all people. And there's the kingdom of God that shows up on the planet, is the people of God that are the dwelling place of God, that have the spirit of God, that are doing amazing things by loving our neighbor like Jesus loves us. That's how the kingdom of God comes. Mm-hmm. And so it's far greater than one person or one system, one government, or one ideology of like structure of family or anything like that. So
That reminds me just of how the Jewish people thought that the Messiah was going to come. Well, you just said like there's no like political figure or a political party or anything that's going to bring the kingdom here, but so that's still true. The Jewish people always thought that they didn't like Jesus because it was totally the opposite of who they thought the Messiah was going to be. They thought it was going to be a political figure coming up out of and fighting against Rome and freeing them from the Roman oppressors. And it's interesting, since you say that and making that connection, that it seems like we're doing that same thing sometimes. We try and think that a political figure or someone else above us is going to be able to save us, when really, like, we should just be loving people. Like, if we want to bring God's kingdom here, we need to be following Jesus' commands to love people and love God.
Then we'll be on the side of truth.
That's what brings the truth.
There you go. Well, it kind of wraps it up for today. Tanner, thanks for being here. Appreciate you coming.
My pleasure.
We've got some exciting guests coming up.
Oh, we do?
Yeah. So here's a tease, if anybody's still listening in on the old podcast. Next week, we've got a national champion in the collegiate basketball world on the podcast.
Ooh, I'm intrigued.
How's that?
National champion collegiate. I'm trying to think who you know.
Who do I know that's a national champion?
I know someone.
College basketball field. And I didn't want to start. Well, we probably should have started there. Hey, and then we've got a couple other guests. Don't have dates exactly. Should I say one might be my mom?
Ooh.
I don't want to put that out there. Just
Your
in case
mom?
My mom. I don't
Your
want.
mom.
I don't want any like extra peer pressure from others that heard she might be on the podcast. So I don't want to say it's my mom coming, because in case she wants to not come.
But you just did.
So anyways, a lot of peer pressure there. That way she shows up. And another guest that could just be a bunch of chaos that we get on the schedule. So, but anyways, maybe we'll talk a little Zag basketball next week, hopefully, with a national champion at the collegiate level guest.
National champion at the collegiate level
We
guest.
could take, we could go a little Zag #1 team in the nation. Tanner, you still need to get a little more on board with Zag basketball and basketball period. Still love you, fully accepted. You can come, podcast anytime, but you really do. This is the year to jump. They're going to be national champions.
I'm working on it. I
mean, you might want to start at the top. All right.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah.
So, anyways, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you. And again, if anything is like helpful, if you got thoughts, insights, hit us up.
Hit us up.
Let us know. Let us
Drop
know.
a DM.
Drop a DM. Send an email. Whatever the case may be, how we can best serve you through the podcast here. We'll see you next time. You can help people find and follow Jesus by subscribing to the podcast, sharing it with some friends, and leaving a review so it's easier for others to find it.